Okay, so here we're taking a look at Barcelona, the Rose of Fire. Now, in this game, players are going to be working to help with the modernization of Barcelona while dealing with the immigration, and in the end, trying to gain the most wealth, which is the victory points of the game. The game itself is divided into 5 rounds, but that's actually 3 periods of time. You have the first period here, which is the first 2 rounds, the second, and then the final period. We have in here pretty much everything that comes in the game other than 2 other player colors, the yellow and green. And we're set up on the board as if we were playing a 2-player game. Now, in a 2-player game, you do ignore the Sant Martí area, so you only use the left and right. At the beginning of each round, players will first establish what the immigration rate will be. And for that, the player who is first will flip over one of these tokens and it will set a number. Now, in the first 4 of these, if that's a 6, you put it back and choose another. But in this case, the immigration will be 4. From here, each player will play a single card from their hand, and in a 2-player game, you will have 5 cards in your hand. You'll only have 4 in a 3 or 4-player game. To start, in the first round, you're only going to have these city cards, and city cards are pretty simple. They have some flavor text, but really what you're looking at is the color and the type of buildings that you can play. And in doing so, if you play this card, you have to, in the beginning, start with one of these starting color areas that match, and later you must attached to a color that matches. The buildings themselves just say which of the 2 types of residences you can build with this specific card. In this case, we could build a 4 roof or a 3 roof. So if the blue player were to play this card, he would get to take a yellow tile, and it could be over there, over here, but we'll place it here for simplicity's sake, and then choose a 4 or a 3 roof building. Now I'm going to choose to do a 3 roof. And in doing a 3 roof, when you place a building, you then take the number of roofs and compare it to the immigration rate. The difference between the 2, you will need to place a person in the Raval, which I believe from historically was the slums of the city. Now, the thing to keep in mind when placing is the more roofs, the more people it's going to house, and that'll allow you to stave off a little bit of social conflict, but it will give you more prestige, which in the end, we are looking to give you more wealth, and we are looking to be wealthy at the end of the game. It will go around and around like this until every player has played all of the cards from their hand. Now, there are some other actions that you can take during your turn, but we'll cover those at the end. Once everyone is played, then we move into the next phase. But one thing I do want to talk about is what happens if we complete what's called a block. And a block is once we've done 4 connecting that are not part of any other block. So in this case, I'll just quickly set up as if we had already made a block here. Okay, so now we have a block here that has been completed. And at the end of any player's turn, if it's completed, then we move on. So we would immediately place an obelisk between it, indicating that this block has been finished, and then we're going to score it. We simply want to see the status values of it. First off, anybody who's involved in it moves up 1 on the Oca of Prestige. In this case, both blue and red are there. Now we want to add up the values, and the values are the inverse of the roofs because we're looking at the prestige of it. So a 4 is worth 1, a 3 is worth 2, a 1 is worth 4, etc. So in this case, the red player has 3 points of prestige, and the blue player has, looks like 6. So the blue player would get an additional point on the Oca of Prestige. Something else to point out here is whenever you're placing into the slums area, you have a hard limit that you can't go over. And in a 2-player game, that's 6, and in a 3 or 4, it's 5. If at any point you need to place more, let's say that blue player already had 6 there, and he had done something, had placed a 1 roof building, he would need to place 3. He would place those 3 in, but then what happens is you need to remove down to your limit. So you take 2, you put 1 in the barricades and bring 1 back to your supply and then check again. Well, in this case, we still have 4, so we do it again. Once all players have played their cards, we'll move to the end of phase procedure. Now I'm going to real quick set up the board a little bit differently, and then I'll explain how that works. So now we're at the end of the round we completed, and this is where we're at. So what's going to happen is first a rebellion. And the nice thing is it's laid out pretty nice on the cards. And the first player is the person who's going to do this. This is where this black bag is going to come into play. The first thing he's going to do is take all of the striking workers and place them into the bag. In addition, we're going to add a number of soldiers either equal to the number of players at the table or the number of meeples currently in the barricade. So in this case, it would be 3. Then from the bag, we're going to draw out a number equal to the immigration rate. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 that we've drawn. All of the player ones will move into the barricades. And for each soldier drawn, we will move up this social conflict track by 1, and we'll explain a little later what that does. Next, each player will lose a number of prestige points equal to how many they have in the barricades. So in this case, the blue player is going to move down 4, and the red is going to move down 2. Now we'll do an assignment of the labor strike card. Now this card goes to whichever player has the most number of workers in the barricade. So in this case, the blue player would take this to their hand. Now this particular card, what it is it takes the place of one of the cards in your hand. It basically makes you lose a turn, unless it's the end of the game where it actually can cost you negative victory points. After this, players will take back their workers. From here, we will assign out a prestige card, and that is the person who is furthest up on the Aqua Prestige. In the event of a tie, it is player order, and since currently blue player is still first player, he would break the tie and take it. If this had been the setup, then red player would have gotten a prestige card. And that also goes into your hand towards your limit for the next round. Now we're going to hand out popularity cards, and these are less about prestige and more about how popular you are with the people. So we're going to be ignoring the status 1 buildings, and you're going to be looking for who has the most of each type. So in this case, red has the most of the 2, so they would get 1 popularity card. It looks like blue has the most 3, so he would get a popularity card. And red has the most of the 4, so they would also get another popularity card. And you do that for each district. The last things to do is to replenish everyone's hand back up to their hand limit, taking into account any cards they already have. So in this case, blue player would take 2 additional city cards to get back up to 5, and the red player would take 3 to get back up to 5. Keep in mind that in a 3 or 4 player game, the limit is 4. Then the first player marker moves to the next person clockwise, and play begins again. Now that's the end of a regular phase. At the end of the second 1 and the second 2, at the end of a period, you'll do an end of period setup. Now this is where you're actually going to be getting victory points from a round, other than victory points you might have gotten through playing prestige cards and things like that. So what you're going to be doing is looking at completed blocks. And this is where the values go the opposite direction. In each completed block, for each one of the 1 roofs, that's 4 points, and then going down from there. So in this example, the blue player is going to get 4, 8, 11, 13, 15. They're going to get 15 points, and those come back to their pile. So we'll move them up to 15. Now for purposes of this video, I'm not going to score the red but on the track, but they would have gotten 1 point for this one, 2 points here, so 3 points, and then an additional 6 points, so they would have gotten 9 points. In addition, when those come off, you flip them over as being completed, because they can no longer have things put on them, and you remove the obelisk. The last thing to do at an end of phase procedure is to empty the bag out, and simply you take them out, and the player who has the fewest striking workers left in the bag gets a prestige award. And a prestige award is a little different. You will gain it based on where you're at in relation to the others. If you are the person who has the most prestige, then you gain 1. If you get the least prestige, you gain 3. And if neither of those apply, then you gain 2. So in this case, I believe red has the actually blue has the least amount of workers in it, so blue would go up by 2. Important to know here the purpose of the Aka of Prestige. A, it does break ties. It also determines who's going to be getting Prestige card at the beginning of each round. In addition, if you ever are at -5 and need to lose, you lose a victory point instead, and if you're ever at 15 and gain, you will gain victory point instead. Throughout the game, sometimes cards or things will actually allow you to get what is considered influence tokens, and they're stored in this red bag. And influence tokens go face down on your player board, and they allow you to buy those influence tiles over there, which are worth victory points at the end. And they'll have different values, so if this player currently had these prestige points, and these, like I said, are normally kept hidden down, he could spend these 2 at any point, and he could pick up this prestige card and add it to himself here, and that now would be 4 victory points. These would then be lost and go back into the bag. There is a secret one that everyone gets at the beginning of the game that you'll want to keep track of because it will allow you to do some special things, and you can refer to the rule book for that. It also, at the end of the game, could be worth points if you don't use it. The final thing to talk about other than the end of game procedure is this social track here. Now you have a bomb that's moving along. If at any point it hits these, certain things will happen. And these are associated with historical events that happen in the game. So when it hits this first one, any of these that are still available come out of play and can no longer be used. If it hits the next one, then they would come out of available. And if it ever hits the last one, then all of them come out of available. And then anarchy will ensue. And in anarchy, what will happen is you'll wait, and if at any point during a rebellion phase a soldier comes out, then what will happen is players will lose all of the influence tiles they currently have, and victory points will just be based on buildings that you've constructed as normal, but an inverted scoring table is used, so no longer will your 1s be worth 1, or before, now they'll be worth 1, etc. The final last phase in the game at the end is similar to a normal end of phase procedure, and you'll still do a rebellion as normal, but whoever gets the prestige card will instead get 4 victory points. Whoever gets the labor strike card will lose a number of points depending on their place on the Aka. Instead of getting popularity cards for majorities out here, you will just get 1 victory point in lieu of each card. No city cards will be dealt out, and you will still get victory points according to the buildings constructed in completed blocks. In addition, for any building that you have outside of a block, you will still get 1 victory point towards the end. You will also get some victory points for your influence counters that are unused, and that's based on 3, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3 points respectively. The winner is whoever has the most victory points. So that's a look at Barcelona, the Rose of Fire. Now the first time I played this game, I wasn't a fan. I honestly thought it was fiddly, I thought it was wonky, and I just really didn't get what it was trying to do. Now, turns out we had gotten some rules wrong, and I think that really soured my opinion on it. So I went back and I played it again, this time with the rules correct, and I played it a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. And actually, I ended up finding a really thematic Euro game here that really captures the spirit of what was going on in Barcelona at this time. You are the wealthy citizens, but you have to worry about the poorer citizens. So you're not the good guys, but you're not the bad guys either. While you are taking care of the poor immigrants coming in and getting them jobs and building them homes, your motivation is wealth and prestige. So you have to constantly balance that out. Now the components in the game are of great quality. There's tons of wooden pieces in here. There's nothing wrong with any of them. It really suits the game. Now in my particular copy, I was missing a black, one of the soldiers, and another soldier had his head off, but honestly it doesn't really impact the game currently for me unless I'm playing with 4 and a certain circumstance comes up. So luckily it hasn't impacted it just yet. The artwork in the game is wonderful. It really has a Barcelona type feel to it, and if you look up pictures of art from Barcelona, you'll see what I mean in terms of that. As I said, the game really does capture the spirit, and there's a lot of decision making in this game. While during the first round you don't feel it, you feel like I play a building, you play a building, and nothing really feels like you're making meaningful decisions. You'll notice right after that first round how meaningful your decisions were, especially as the board gets more and more filled up and there's less real estate to be taken, and those workers are in the barricades more. Now, speaking of the workers in the barricades and out there in the slums, that's the one thing that I'm not sure I cared for, but I get, because it can punish you unnecessarily. Let's say that you had 6 in the bag and your opponent had 5. There's still the random chance that all of your workers come out and none of theirs do. And that can just punish you, and that won't feel good. So some people might be turned off by that, especially if it happens to them the first time they play it. But overall, this game is wonderful for what it is. It's not a great game. It's not going to blow your mind, but it is going to make you feel it's going to make you feel the spirit of what the game intended to be. So for me, I'm going to keep this game in my collection for a while. I don't know how long, but definitely for a while. I really enjoy the theme of it. The mechanisms, maybe not as much, but the theme has really captured me. I hope this has helped you decide and take a look at whether the game might be a fit for you. I definitely recommend playing the game at least once, twice. The game does play best with 3 or 4 players. 2 players plays okay, but there's some slight changes to the rules and the board doesn't get filled up as quick. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.